her nails look really pretty.
Wow, I bet they do.
That was my shower present to her. Because she didn't have a shower.
Here's the first. The fucking family comes in as I'm recording. I don't know who I'm talking to right now because this will very likely be edited out. Yeah, go ahead. Just interrupt this as much as possible. Go ahead. Why not? Fuck it. We're already here. Well, that was kind of annoying, right? Just a little bit? I think so. You know what isn't annoying? This brand new studio album from Kardashev, their sophomore studio album entitled Liminal Rite. Look at how flawlessly I brought all of this together. It's almost as if this was planned, and I definitely wasn't very rudely interrupted by my lovely fiancé and my family members and their little bachelorette party or whatever the fuck they're doing. I'm not really sure. I don't get to have a party. I have to go to work after this. Anyways, Kardashev. Kardashev are not your typical death metal band. They play a particular new subgenre that they have dubbed Deathgaze. As the name implies, it combines death metal with shoegaze. It is literally death metal's equivalent to black gaze. If we're being honest, I would say that more accurately, this is a combination of deathcore and melodic death metal with, like, progressive and post-metal. I'm not really hearing much shoegaze at all, but hey, you know, there are some atmospheric elements and some shimmering melodies and instrumental pieces that I guess wouldn't be out of place on maybe an Alcest or a Death Heaven record, so sure, we'll go with Deathgaze for now. Not that it really matters what we decide to label this sound. What I'm getting at, ultimately, and what does matter, is that Kardashev are not your typical death metal band. And for that reason alone, I was relatively pumped for Liminal Rite, even despite never having heard anything about this band beforehand, not even having heard any singles from this record. Because I like death metal, and I just like hearing it done in different ways, you know? It's my favorite genre. I like all the crazy genre fusions. I love all the weird sub-genres, technical death metal, melodic death metal, avant-garde death metal, progressive death metal, whatever the fuck you want to call it death metal. I think it's all fun. It's all exciting. Modern death metal in particular has just been on a fucking roll as of late. I mean, Venom Prison, Blood Incantation, Gate Creeper, Rivers of Nile. None of these bands are identical. They all have certain similarities, but they're also all doing their own thing. And I kind of got the vibe just from reading about Kardashev that maybe Kardashev would join the likes of Venom Prison and Blood Incantation and Gate Creeper and Rivers of Nile, you know? I was legit pumped for this. And then I heard the record. And, yeah. Now let me be clear before we go any further. There is a lot to appreciate and love about what Kardashev is doing on Liminal Rite. For one, this is one of the most emotionally charged and vulnerable records I've heard in 2022. Not just in death metal, but in general. There's an absurd level of honesty and passion that is extremely endearing. The album's concept and themes center and circle around liminality, a term used to describe the psychological process of transitioning across boundaries and borders. The term limen comes from the Latin for threshold. It is literally the threshold separating one space from another. The album's concept is emboldened and propelled by a narrative that is both complex but understandable and relatable. As the band writes, it's an anecdotal tale from a fictional man's perspective late in life on how perception and reality do not coalesce. His experience tells a larger message of how our minds often create a false view of the past. And even if you ignore or are unaware of all of this, it still becomes pretty clear pretty quickly that this is a very personal record for the band. Compost Gravesong, for instance, deals with the complicated traumas and feelings that often stem from losing a loved one. As the band write, at the back of my house by the compost is the plot where my brother lies dead. He got lost. That's what I told them, and I'm mocked by the stone on his head. And Glass Phantoms goes even further into even darker territory, almost appearing to detail the final conversation between a son and his dying father, and as it turns out, they did not have the best relationship whatsoever. So yeah, long story short, emotionally speaking, this thing is fucking brutal. Heavy-hitting, painful, agonizing, all the buzzwords you want to fill in here. Honestly, anybody attempting to argue otherwise clearly has not paid attention to anything I've said thus far. Unfortunately, while the lyrics and concept are pretty impactful, the same cannot be said for the music, and more specifically, the production of this record. This is a very hearty record, but not an especially tasty or well-seasoned one. A lot of the blame lies in the production of the record, the mixing and the mastering of Liminal Rite. I found it genuinely difficult to really understand or appreciate a lot of the music on this record because so much of it was so heavily compressed. Everything is buried in walls of noise. The drums are so overbearingly loud and pummeling. It feels like something that would be more appropriate on like a slam record or something from Cattle Decapitation or Misery Index or Anal Nafrak or something like that. A lot of the guitar parts are buried and feel very like smoggy and hazy, like it's hard to get really a firm grasp on what's happening. A lot of the clean vocals have this weird kind of echoey reverb effect to them that I just find genuinely unappealing as well. When things slow down, like when there's a breakdown introduced or some spoken word pieces, things become a little bit more visible, a little bit more transparent, but for the most time, I legitimately could not hear a lot of what was happening on this, and as a result, it's difficult for me to really pinpoint exact moments that I enjoyed. And honestly, the few that I could pinpoint aren't really that special. I mean, they're not horrible per se, but it's nothing that you haven't really heard in some capacity in the past decade from bands like Fallujah, Rivers of Nile, and many other kind of technical and progressive death metal bands. For instance, what little I could hear of the album's opening track, Silvered Shadows, felt eerily reminiscent to me of very early Fallujah, like everything from the Harvest Womb up until The Flesh Prevails. The same can really be said for quite a few tracks on this record, like Lavender Calligraphy, The Cellar of Ghosts. I think Apparitions of Candlelight is one of the stronger cuts on this record, because it does have some slower, moodier, more appropriately post-rock shoegaze-style arrangements that, I don't know, it brings to mind like some of the softer material for Ordinary Corrupt Human Love era Death Heaven, mixed in obviously with those muscular, beefy, aggressive death metal rhythms. This is where the idea of Deathgaze, in general may I add, just feels a lot better realized. I would actually say the same for Vagabond's Lament and Beyond the Passage of Embers as well. I think these are some pretty strong cuts, a lot of emotion, a lot of good, strong melodies. The production obviously holds it back from being as impactful, as heart-wrenching as it should be, but they're still pretty effective. The issue now, though, is that these songs are a little too long. Beyond the Passage of Embers in particular does not need to be 11 minutes long. It just doesn't. Period. I'm unfortunately going to give this a 2.5 out of 5, and this is simultaneously an enthusiastic one and also an unenthusiastic 2.5 out of 5. Like, I want you to check this out because it is unique, and there's a lot going on lyrically and conceptually that I think a lot of people will attach themselves to and will appreciate, but also unenthusiastic because musically there's not a lot here, and the production just kills so much of what is there. Maybe in the hands of a different producer or a different team behind the scenes, this thing would bloom like a flower in spring, but I gain nothing from worrying about these hypothetical scenarios, so I will not do so. For now, I feel pretty comfortable giving this a 2.5 out of 5. I'm still going to check out whatever Kardashev does in the future, because I'm still curious to see where Deathgaze will take them. I'm curious to see what lessons they learn from this record and how they continue to expand upon this sound. But yeah, overall, Liminal Rite, slightly overhyped. It's okay. I wish it were better than okay, but it isn't. It's just okay, for me at least. And that is it for the Metal Meltdown. I'm not an expert, nor do I claim to be, so what do you think? Do you like this record? Do you not like this record? And what do you want to hear from me next? And thank you for watching. Make sure you press subscribe right here so you get updates on the Metal Meltdown fucking immediately. And as always, you have yourself a fantastic fucking day.